Jerome by Philip Resman. One day, in a pond in a summery green hollow, a big frog named Jerome was sitting catching flies when a witch came by. "Hello, old witch," Jerome said. The witch didn't like to be called a witch. She looked at Jerome with silvery eyes and smiled a mean smile. "It's not nice to call people witches," she said. "Well, I'm sorry," Jerome said. "I could turn you into something awful for saying that," the witch said. "But I think I'll turn you into a prince instead." "Well, I don't mind," Jerome said. "We'll see," said the witch, laughing to herself. "We'll see." And she waved her crooked black stick in the air and began to sing a strange tune without words. And soon a big wind sprang up, and the pond began to bubble slowly like hot oatmeal. Then all stopped, and Jerome was still a frog. "Am I a prince now?" he asked. "Of course you are," said the witch. "I don't feel like a prince." "Oh, you will," said the witch, laughing up her flappy sleeve. "You will. Now you just go on into town and see what happens." So Jerome did as the witch said, and when he came to town, he said, "Hello, I'm the new prince that does princely deeds." The townspeople laughed to themselves because they saw he was just a frog. But they said to Jerome, "So you're the prince who does princely deeds? How would you like to do some for us?" "At your service," Jerome said. "Good," said the townspeople. "Now, the first thing we want you to do is to get rid of the big, terrible crow who eats up all of our corn before we can harvest it." So they took Jerome to a field where the corn swayed light green and fragrant in the sun, and they left him to wait for the crow. Soon, an enormous crow landed nearby and immediately began to eat the corn. "Stop," Jerome shouted. "Stop eating the corn." The crow looked over his shoulder, still munching, and then after a bit he swallowed and he said, "I never talk with my mouth full. It's bad manners." "It's bad manners," Jerome said, "to eat corn that doesn't belong to you." "Well, I know," said the crow, "but I'm very large for my size. It takes a lot to fill me up. Also," said the crow, leaning down near Jerome's ear and whispering, "I'm very worried that everybody else is going to eat up all the corn before I do. How about you, for example? Wouldn't you like to get your teeth into this nice, juicy corn?" "Not me," Jerome said. "I'd rather eat flies." "Honest to goodness?" said the crow. "That's right," said Jerome. "And I promise never to eat any corn." "How about that?" "Well, that's just fine," said the crow. "That's right," Jerome said. "I also know some fish that will never eat corn. And at least 8 beavers, a couple dozen foxes, and a whole tribe of frogs. And I know for a fact that all lions and tigers and whales would be happy never to eat corn." "Hooray!" shouted the crow. And then he flew off in a great flutter of wings, whistling tunes that he remembered from a long time ago, before, when he hadn't worried about everybody eating up his corn. After that, Jerome went back to the townspeople, and he told them the crow wouldn't be eating all of their corn anymore, just some of it every now and then. And then the townspeople said, "That's fine. Now how would you like to do another princely deed?" "At your service," Jerome said. "Good," said the people. "There's this greasy dragon who breathes fire and smells terrible. We'd like you to slay him because he burns our houses and our forests." "All right," said Jerome, and the people gave him a sword and took him to a dark cave in the side of a black mountain. "The dragon lives in there," they said, and then they ran off to hide behind some rocks further off. Jerome stood at the entrance to the cave and he called in, "Dragon, come out at once. I'm going to slay you." After a while, the dragon poked his head out of the cave and blew just a little puff of pink flame with smoke to match. "Why?" "Because," Jerome said, coughing a little from the smoke. "You've been burning the people's houses and forests." "Well," said the dragon, "it's my nature." He poked Jerome with a greasy green paw. "You know what I mean? I just can't help burning things no matter how hard I try." Jerome nodded and thought for a while. Finally he said, "Why not burn other things?" "What else is there to burn?" the dragon asked, shaking himself impatiently and giving off a swampy smell. Jerome stepped back a little. "Well," he said, "how about burning garbage at the town garbage dump?" "Garbage," the dragon said, half to himself. "Does it smell deliciously awful?" "Yes," Jerome said, "and there are piles and piles of it outside of town. Great heaps of it." "Does it burn easily?" asked the dragon. "Well, no. It takes some doing to get it started," Jerome said. "It's sort of damp." "Good," said the dragon. "I like a challenge. Lead me to it." So Jerome led the dragon to the garbage dump, where the dragon puttered about, poking at the garbage and peering and sniffing into things and pretending he hadn't made up his mind yet. But he already had, and he soon settled down happily to the job of burning the town garbage, which he did every Tuesday and Thursday, resting and telling lies on the other days of the week. After Jerome had stopped the dragon from burning houses, some of the people began to say that maybe Jerome really was a prince. Maybe, they said, he really is a prince. But most of the people still laughed. He's just a frog. In spite of this, they asked Jerome to do one more princely deed. It was a cold day, and the windows chattered in their frames, and the people said to Jerome, "We want you to do something about the wicked wizard who lives in the dark woods and does terrible things. You take the path to the left where it branches." So Jerome took the path to the left and soon came to a stone tower that had no door and no windows. At the top, looking over the edge, was the wizard. He had yellow eyes and mean ears. "Who are you?" he asked in a mean voice. "I'm the prince that does princely deeds," Jerome said. The wizard said to himself, "He's a frog. I can smell a frog when I see one." Then he said to Jerome, "What were you before you were a prince?" "A frog," Jerome said. "What were you before you were a wizard?" The wizard put on a large pair of green spectacles and peered down at Jerome. "Well," he said after a long time, "I guess I was a boy." "Oh," Jerome said. "Why did you stop?" "Well, being a wizard seemed as if it might be fun, but it's not." "That's too bad," Jerome said. "I'm sorry. Was it fun being a boy?" "Oh," said the wizard, "was it ever sunshine and thunderstorms, blue skies, green skies, secret codes, watermelon and horse chestnuts, telling stories under the porch, old ants who smelled like flowers, summer mornings before the world was awake, and running downhill so fast you couldn't stop. Oh, I wish I were a boy again." The wizard had forgotten that when he wished for things, they really happened. There was a thunder of lightning, and the dark wood turned pale lavender, and the wizard turned into a little boy with red hair. "I," shouted the boy, "I'm going to run downhill so fast I can't stop." And in a moment he was gone. When the townspeople heard that Jerome had performed his third princely deed and that the wizard was gone, they decided he must really be a prince, even though one who looked like